I never imagined my move to a quiet lake house would turn me into public enemy number one. But when my HOA president threatened to tear down my family's dock, a piece of history really, I didn't just defend myself. I found a legal loophole that shut down their favorite community event, a 40-year-old fishing festival, and sent the entire neighborhood into chaos. Right now, I'm sitting on that very dock, we call her the Sentinel, sipping a cold iced tea, watching a dozen frustrated neighbors standing on the shore, casting hopeful glances at the water they can't touch. They're locked out of the best fishing spots during the most important week of their year, and honestly, the justice of it all is sweeter than any victory in a courtroom. Drop a comment below, because trust me, you are going to want to weigh in on this. The story starts about a year ago, when my wife, Sarah, and I bought her late grandfather Finn's property on Cypress Cove Lake. We were drawn to the place for the quiet, the remote IT job flexibility, and mainly that battered, wonderful old wooden dock that Finn built with his own two hands back in the 60s. It was my escape, my fishing sanctuary. For Sarah, it was a living memory, a piece of her childhood where she'd sit with Grandpa Finn, pulling sunnies and small bass out of the clear water. The first few weeks were pure bliss. I had my coffee on the Sentinel every morning, and by 5 o'clock I was casting lines. The neighbors seemed nice enough. We got the usual welcome baskets, including a particularly thoughtful one from an older gentleman named Abe Solomon, who lived a few doors down in a wonderfully eccentric deep teal house. Abe told me about the big event, the Covetown Classic, their annual fishing festival. It was a massive deal, a week of tournaments, music, local vendors, prizes worth thousands, the beating heart of the community. I was actually excited to participate. Then the letter arrived. Official HOA letterhead, Cypress Cove Homeowners Association. It stated that my dock was in violation of current architectural guidelines and needed to be removed within 30 days. I was stunned. The thing had been there since 1962, long before the HOA even existed in 1985. It was the definition of grandfathered. I called the number, and that's when I met Brenda Thorne, the HOA president. I understand your sentiment. Mr. Miller, she drawled, her voice hitting that perfect, condescending pitch that suggested she understood absolutely nothing about sentiment. But your grandfather-in-law's structure was non-compliant. Since the property changed hands, we need to bring it up to code. The 30-day clock is running. I tried to appeal to reason, to history, to the structural integrity of the thing, but she just gave this dry, brittle laugh. This isn't constitutional law, Mr. Miller. This is Cypress Cove. Read your covenants. Fighting the HOA rarely ends well for homeowners. That night, my blood boiling, I was taking out the trash when I heard voices near my driveway, Brenda Thorne and Mitch, a fellow board member. They hadn't seen me, and they stopped right past the property line, speaking in hushed, mean tones. I don't care about heritage or whatever he calls it, Brenda hissed, gesturing towards my dock. That hideous wooden thing blocks the perfect view from my main living room window. Besides, we need that shoreline cleared for the new community fishing pier planned for the Classic this year. And that, folks, was the moment everything changed. This wasn't about regulations or safety or community standards. This was about territorial warfare and a view. And Brenda Thorne had just declared war on the wrong IT engineer. The next morning, I cleared my schedule. Coffee, 4 monitors, and a deep dive into legal minutiae. I printed every HOA document, studied state property laws, and requested decades-old county deeds. Sarah, bless her heart, brought me lunch at the desk. I was a man possessed, fighting for her grandfather's legacy. I found the crucial details. Structures predating the HOA were explicitly protected. More importantly, I educated myself on riparian rights, the legal right of a property owner to access the water adjacent to their land. My biggest break, though, came when I brought my research to Abe Solomon at his deep teal house. He poured me a coffee with a generous float of something amber and chuckled. Brenda tried to make me repaint this house 5 years ago, Jake. Said it violated the neighborhood aesthetic. I showed her the original 1985 docs. She wasn't happy, but she couldn't do a thing. Abe confirmed my findings. Armed with his veteran advice and stacks of documents, I drafted a formal response, attaching the legal precedents, and refusing to budge. Brenda's counter was swift and utterly ruthless. 3 days later, I was called to an emergency board meeting. She didn't bother hiding her displeasure when Abe walked in with Sarah and me. She went through the motions, dismissing my historical research with a flick of her wrist. Then came the twist. The HOA is not attacking the dock itself, she announced with a smug, razor-thin smile. But the walkway to Mr. Miller's dock crosses 6 feet of common area property. It's a safety hazard. The board has determined we must install a safety barrier. It was brilliant, mean, and unexpected. She wasn't fighting the object. She was fighting my access to the object. They called the vote, and it passed instantly. Mr. Miller can keep his dock, Brenda purred, her eyes glittering with triumph. He just won't be able to use it. 3 days later, I stood there watching a crew install a solid metal fence, locking me out of my own dock. Brenda stopped by. "I told you that you couldn't win, Mr. Miller." She didn't whisper it. She projected it, ensuring the neighbors who had gathered could hear. She thought she had won, but while she was gloating, I had already received an email from the County Land Management Office regarding the complaint I filed. And that email contained a hint that would wipe that smile off her face forever. The meeting with Logan Parker, the land management specialist, was eye-opening. Logan showed me the maps. Cypress Cove HOA doesn't own the entire lakefront. Jake, the lake itself and a 16-foot shoreline buffer are state property, managed by the Department of Natural Resources, the DNR. The HOA had usage rights, but not the authority Brenda assumed. This was great, but I needed to connect it to Brenda's corruption. My research deepened. I found business records confirming Brenda's long-standing financial relationship with the construction company she planned to hire for the new pier. I even met with some disgruntled neighbors at Abe's Deep Teal house. They confirmed she was a tyrant, selective enforcement, directing maintenance contracts to her brother-in-law's company. The list went on, but the real game-changer came when I contacted the DNR about fishing regulations. I learned about environmental protection laws regarding key aquatic habitats. I smiled, remembering the big largemouth bass I always spotted near my old dock every spring. That's when I had the idea. I needed proof of an ecological conflict. I reached out to Dr. Ethan Vance, an aquatic biologist at the local university who had written papers on bass habitats. I had to badger his 2 assistants and send a detailed email, but he finally called back. "Mr. Miller, your timing is..." "Interesting," he said. I was honest about the HOA conflict, but emphasized my genuine concern for the lake. When I described the consistent, predictable pattern of bass activity near my 60-year-old wooden pilings, his scientific curiosity kicked in. "Those behaviors are highly consistent with spawning activity," he admitted. He agreed to an official survey. Saturday morning, Dr. Vance and I were in wetsuits conducting a meticulous underwater inspection. The water was surprisingly clear. He pointed out everything: the specific composition of the gravel beds, the optimal oxygen levels, and the small depressions he identified as base reds, their nests. As we surfaced onto my dock, arms full of samples, Mitch was standing on the shore, phone plastered to his ear, a look of pure suspicion on his face. "Scientific research," Dr. Vance chirped cheerfully as Mitch stalked off. Vance turned to me, his eyes wide with excitement. "Jake, your dock. It is situated directly over a significant spawning ground for largemouth bass. The conditions are perfect. This is a critical breeding habitat, and any construction or major disturbance like a new concrete pier would decimate it." I had found my heavy artillery. I immediately filed a formal complaint with the DNR, requesting an environmental assessment of the proposed pier and protection for the spawning area. Meanwhile, Brenda was having the daily fines against me hiked to $500. She was desperate, legally weak but stubborn. She figured the pressure would break me. She was wrong. Within a week, the DNR temporarily suspended the permit for her new pier. The official notice was posted right where the pier was supposed to go. A stark white sign with bold black lettering. The news hit the community like a cold wave. Brenda called another emergency meeting, angrier than ever. She stood before a packed, suffocating room and did the only thing she could. She played the victim. "Mr. Miller has taken it upon himself to sabotage a community project that would benefit everyone. His selfish actions may cost us the Covetown Classic. The hostility in the room was palpable. They voted to increase my fines again, and even suspended my access to the community pool and tennis courts. She was trying to isolate me entirely, but I stood up, interrupting her tyrannical flow. "Mrs. Blackwood," I said, my voice cutting through the noise, "have you informed the community about your long-standing business relationship with Lakeview Construction? Or the fact that the environmental impact assessment for the new pier was never completed?" A hush fell. Brenda's face went crimson. "That's completely irrelevant and potentially slanderous. This meeting is adjourned." She slammed her gavel and bolted, but I knew the seed of doubt was planted. 2 weeks later, the DNR released their preliminary findings, confirming Dr. Vance's work. The area was a critical spawning ground. Based on this, the DNR issued a special protection order for the upcoming spawning season, which, fatefully, coincided perfectly with the Covetown Classic. The order prohibited all fishing and construction within 500 feet of the spawning area, effectively shutting down the entire shoreline of Cypress Cove. The festival was dead. Brenda tried one last time to rally the troops against me, but this time, the DNR director, William Foster, was present. "The protection order isn't the result of anyone's complaint," he stated, cutting Brenda off completely. "It's based on scientific assessment of a critical wildlife habitat. If anything, we should thank Mr. Miller for bringing this to our attention. Without proper protection, the base population that fuels your festival could have been seriously damaged for years to come." The tide finally, irrevocably turned. Seeing their beloved tradition crumble because of Brenda's selfish actions and corruption was the shock the community needed. At the most tense meeting I'd ever been to, old Abe Solomon finally stood up, his voice echoing with the authority of a retired litigator. "Enough, Brenda. We're losing the classic because you couldn't admit you were wrong." Then Harold, the oldest board member, took the microphone. "I propose a vote of no confidence in our current HOA president," he announced. The ensuing chaos was beautiful. Brenda, used to absolute power, was completely blindsided. The local paper, tipped off about the controversy, published an article detailing her corruption. Under mounting pressure, the board held a formal vote. Brenda Thorne was removed, and Diana Foster, an environmental attorney, was elected. Diana's first act was peace. The HOA removed the fence, acknowledged my legal rights, and issued a public apology. In return, I agreed to open the Sentinel, my dock, for community use during the modified festival. But Brenda had one last desperate swing left in her. The morning after the peace agreement, a stern-faced process server delivered a massive 27-page lawsuit against the HOA and me personally. She hired a big city firm and was suing for $750,000 in damages, claiming illegal collusion and tortious interference, a classic slap suit, designed to intimidate us into bankruptcy. It was the only time Sarah looked truly worried. "Do we back down?" she asked me, holding the legal papers. "No," I told her. "We call Abe." Abe Solomon came out of retirement just for this. He reviewed the filings and laughed. "It's a pathetic, desperate move. We file for immediate dismissal and countersue for abuse of process." The case went before Judge Catherine Miller, a jurist known for zero tolerance on environmental fraud. Brenda's lawyers presented their theatrical performance, painting me as a vindictive newcomer. When Abe took the floor, he was calm, methodical, presenting the financial conflicts, the DNR reports, and the selective enforcement history. On the day of the ruling, the courtroom was packed. Judge Miller didn't mince words. "The court finds no merit in the plaintiff's claims. In fact, the evidence suggests that it was the actions of the HOA under Miss Blackwood's leadership that were potentially illegal, including failure to conduct required environmental assessments and apparent conflicts of interest." She dismissed the case entirely and referred the matter of Brenda's business dealings to the County Ethics Committee. Brenda sat stone-faced, defeated. The fishing festival went ahead. It was smaller, yes, but it was amazing. Community members lined up to use the Sentinel as a launching point. We set up a little welcome station with refreshments and educational materials about protecting the base. The fishing was actually extraordinary that year. as the protected spawning grounds led to booming base populations in the open water. The DNR confirmed Brenda had deliberately misrepresented environmental reports in the past, hitting her with civil penalties. And the biggest reward? Word spread that Brenda Thorne had sold her house and moved to another state entirely. The fence is gone, replaced by a beautiful, tasteful walkway the new HOA installed as a gesture of goodwill. I'm still sitting here, watching neighbors and friends enjoy the lake, seeing the life return to this community. I can't help but feel grateful to Brenda Thorne, because her attempt to bully me out of my dock ultimately protected the entire lake and brought real, positive change to Cypress Cove. Sometimes, fighting for what's right isn't just about keeping what belongs to you, but about forcing a system to correct itself. So, if you're watching this and facing a bullying HOA, or any type of unfair, corrupt power, I want to know, do you think shutting down the community's favorite tradition was justified to achieve justice? Or was it an act of revenge that went too far? Drop your opinion in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about fighting the good fight. Thanks for watching.